I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Operations Committee. It's February 11th. And the first order of business is the acceptance of the minutes for the January 2019 committee meeting. Are there any corrections, deletions, additions? I just had one. Under the Board of Education financial report, if we could report specifically that the projected surplus was $783,369. Any other,
I'm
Mr.
just,
Barone?
am I on here? I'm just wondering if maybe when I spoke last month, I might have said approximately 783,000. When I looked at the minutes, it was really, I will look at the tape, or I'll talk to whoever put the minutes
All right.
down, but I'll figure.
If we could
why there's
just-
the
It
difference.
just says projected a surplus, and that's what was written on the documentation.
Sure.
For the financial forecast. So
Okay.
that's usually what I report out. So when I saw it and it was rounded off, it was just a little
Yeah.
puzzling to me.
I think I might have rounded it, so I won't tonight.
Okay.
No
All right. Any other concerns about those minutes? Seeing none, we'll take consensus, starting with Mrs. Raccio.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
And yes, thank you. Okay. Next order of business is discussion and possible consensus on the financial report for January 2019. Mr. Barone?
Hi, okay, so we are projecting a surplus of $832,255.00. As of right now.
Okay.
Sorry, it's about an increase of about $48,886. And I was just gonna highlight which areas really have changed, and I guess I'll just note the ones that didn't change. Contingency did not change at all. Benefits, we saw a significant increase of over $82,000, and that's, we've got 3 less employees on insurance right now. They dropped it or came off of insurance for whatever reason. We also had 4 employees change from dual to single, so there's some savings there. All right, on tuitions, excuse me?
You know, that's amazing to think about, that 7, if I understood you correctly, 7 people made a difference of $80,000+ for insurance is astounding when you think about it, you know, just as a point of reference.
Sure, but also understand that, you know, it's 6 months, we're
Right,
still
I
6
get it.
months in the year, and
Right,
and
anything
if they
else
were,
would
if
change.
they were family, that's a, you know, there's a bigger number. If they were
Sure.
4 single, and
Got
I
it.
don't have that breakdown in front of me.
I know, I'm not
but
asking
obviously,
for
you
it
know,
at all.
yeah.
Yeah, it blows my mind,
Yeah.
you know, how that could make it such a
Sure.
significant difference, and it's just interesting.
Okay, tuitions, we saw the deficit increase of about $65,000. We've got a few new placements that have occurred. We also have, I believe we're gonna have a couple more, but we didn't know where they were going, so I didn't really want to take an estimate on tuitions. So I would expect that this is gonna change again for next month. The other piece of this, the excess cost, we reduced that deficit by $12,626. That's because the state provided us their first estimate. They give us an estimate in February, then they give us, it's really an estimate in May, but that's the final number we end up with. And then they true it up after year end, but by then it's too late to impact this. So it was initially based on, we based it on our original budget, then we thought there was gonna be a deficit, and now we have, I think, a better number because the state, we filed a report and they've calculated. Things that could impact this are students coming in and out of the district. Coming in the district may not impact it because it's a shortened year now, but if we've got a student that we thought was gonna be significant tuition and they leave, it could go down. But the corresponding tuition costs would also go down. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Transportation, we saw an increase of $21,361. Again, we've got vehicles that we think we're gonna use all year, and we start them and we stop them, and we end up with, this number fluctuates significantly. And also, if we outplace some students and we need additional transportation, you could see it go the other way. Unemployment, I increased the deficit by, the projected deficit by 6,878. We picked up, there's another employee on the unemployment right now, and that was driving the cost up. And, you know, at this point, that's the projection, but I think this may, as folks cap out, then this number shrinks. Medicare and Social Security, that's really based on the wages, and I think the surplus based on wages at this point compared to prior years, I'm expecting an increase of another $4,000 in the surplus. The other accounts increased the projected deficit by $25,000 related to additional hours for support to BCBA and social work. And then on utilities, I'm projecting a zero balance right now. The electricity and firm gas are under budget. The oil and interruptible gas are over budget. We don't really have interruptible gas, but that's the line item we call it. It's all firm, but we have two different accounts we've budgeted in. But right now, I think it's kind of too early to tell, so I think it's going to be right now about a flat zero. And then plant maintenance, we don't project till later on during the year. So that's really the summary of the financial projection for the month.
Okay. Questions?
One of the things that you're going to start seeing, and we talked about this at central office, and we haven't done this in previous years, but we would like to consider doing it this year, is that as we go to pay retro on a lot of the contracts that are coming forward, we really do want to draw that from contingency to true up, because that's where contingency budgeted for those salaries. So we like to really true it up so it doesn't look like we never used our contingency for what we budgeted it for. It might create, you know, it will obviously adjust accounts, but that was why we budgeted that amount, because we have to understand where our salary account is. Because I see, you know, we talk about this, but if we, like right now, our salary account is 24,000 to the good. When this goes to the, or approximately, right, correct, $25,000 to the good, or excuse me, 36,000 to the good. The fact is that that number is going to, as we start paying, you know, we have a large para contract that we have to pay retro, we're starting to pay on clerical, you know, that's going to potentially go into the red. And so we need to make sure that we adjust the funds that we had allocated in our contingency for negotiation costs, which wasn't legal costs necessarily. It was actually salary costs. We have to transfer that over so we true our numbers. So that we could actually see at the end of the year, we had this much either surplus or deficit in our salary account, and then our contingency. It's not where we're losing money. It's just putting it in the right place. So you're not losing money. There's no loss of money here. It's just putting it in the right accounts so that next year, if somebody were to ask us, well, why is your contingency going down so much? Or you didn't use your contingency, you know, we could actually say, well, no, we transferred funds out. But again, it's not where this bottom line is still going to be this bottom line. It's just not going to be in the same object codes.
Mr. Votto?
I understand what you're saying, but forgive my ignorance, but I just want to make sure I got this right.
Yeah, no worries.
When you did the budget last year,
Correct.
You projected salaries. Let's take paras, because that was one of the
With no increase in
with
the
no
salary
increase.
account.
But everybody got it. I mean, it was the total. All right, so let's say the total salary account for that was. Give me a number.
Say $3 million.
All right. Now you're saying that the difference.
Was budgeted for the potential negotiated increase was budgeted in the
It
contingency.
was budget. I didn't.
Yes, we always do that.
So
Yes.
it's the difference. that's
Correct.
in
Correct.
In contingency.
Do you have those numbers yet?
We'll be getting those. That'll probably, you'll see that next month.
For how many unions are we talking about?
Well, we have 5 unions.
Were they all after?
Yeah, it was,
were
they're
all
all
I
after
should
the
know the answer
budget.
to that, but.
They were retro. Some were smaller than others, but, so that's where we just want to true it up. But we didn't budget, because we want to make sure people understand, first of all, which I think I know all you understand, is that we don't double budget. So we don't budget an increase in the salary account
Right.
and put money in the
See,
contingency.
This is the issue that bothers me, though, because I don't like contingency going down that much, number one. I always like it to be up there, because for various reasons.
But it is still up there based on,
I know, but I think this is I think somehow we have to keep stressing or starting earlier with these unions to get them to sit down.
Of course.
I don't know how we do that, Danielle. But, because I know in this past, with one of the negotiating teams, I think Mrs. Lavalette started in the fall, looking for dates, and it didn't happen.
correct.
I'm hoping maybe next time we can even include it in a contract.
Well, the thing is,
More specifically, when
That's a good thought.
they have to start. Maybe
Yeah,
that's
and
something we
I-
overlooked. I don't know.
I don't know. The thing is that regardless if we settled them that last month or if we settled them July 1st, they still would have been in this year's contingency.
Oh,
So the thing is that no matter what, we still have to budget them in contingency unless we negotiated, which none of them were slated to really be closed out before June 30th. It was just they went longer
yeah.
in terms of the retro pay. So it's the same amount of money.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
just,
All
it's
right.
just that it took them longer to get their money.
Nevertheless, that was still an issue.
No, it totally was an issue, and I agree with you. And I know we've discussed that for a while because what it throws off in negotiations, which is no surprise, it throws off our ability to change insurance. Because the longer you go in the year, you're not going to change somebody's insurance plan mid-year. So that's really where the negotiation upper hand comes in. Not so much on the salary, it's more on the insurance side, which I know that's been our struggle. But the reason why I bring this up is I just want to kind of prepare you that you'll see contingency go down, but you'll see the salary account go up or maintain itself appropriately so. So we don't want to alarm you, but we just want to true things up.
But the process, we're gonna come back with the proposed adjustments, because
Yes, we'll
we
share all
can't,
that.
we can't, so next month, I think what you'll see is contingency really won't change, but we'll have a set of proposed adjustments,
Right.
budget transfers, if you will,
Yep.
to reduce contingency and increase salary.
Okay. All right. Mrs. McKay?
Yeah, I wanted to make that point exactly, Dominic, that I appreciate your concern, Sal, but anybody that paid attention would see that the transfers, the audit trail is available. You don't have to look very hard to see. You guys always bring to us specifically, if you're transferring out of contingency, where's it going? It's
Exactly.
right, so what specific accounts? So I think you're protected in that regard, that the audit trail will be authentic,
Yes.
and you'll see that why and how it occurred, you know.
The bigger thing is that we haven't traditionally done this just because we've left it in contingency. And then if there's been an overrun, obviously, we've made those adjustments,
Right.
like you're saying, through the audit trail. What we had talked about at central office this year, regardless if we need the money in salaries or not, technically it was budgeted to go into salaries because of the fact of the negotiations. So by moving it over, rather than waiting until it's needed, it helps us then prepare our, and reevaluate our budgeting process, so that if we do get reduced by the mayor, that we could go back and say, okay, remember, because we take our initial $200,000 reduction because of leaves of absences, so it gives us a little bit truer numbers to be able to balance our projections for next year.
And I appreciate that, because there's enough town councilors that were on Board of Ed at a given time, and, you want to make sure they understand, and the mayor, frankly, and the public, for that matter, understand why our contingency
Correct.
is reflected in the fashion it is, and that's a missed opportunity potentially. And I
Correct.
appreciate, that's important for us to make sure when we're talking to the public or town council and the mayor, to make those points that, that's an opportunity for us.
And I think it shows to them, it explains to them further, which I think we all agree, that the contingency is really set based on true indicators, and that it's not just an arbitrary number, and that it is going to go up and down depending on the number of negotiations. That's really the base contingency, really, that's the adjustable amount. The other amount is the 2 teachers, the 2 paras, the bus, those types of things. The adjustable amount is the negotiations, and I think they need to understand it, because from what I understand, I think we do it a little differently than the town government side. And so I just want to make sure that
And we have how many more unions than they do
Oh.
that impact us greater, you
have a-
know? That's a huge piece, but I do like Mike's idea, and I don't know if it's a practical, you know, realistic. I mean, it's practical, but I don't know if it's realistic that if you could write into future contracts
Correct.
that you start you know, you want to start an end date that works and
Yep.
why you're looking for it, you know?
Because just going back to the town departments, if I'm not mistaken, a town department's request, like for example, say it's, well, pick a department, I'll just say Department X says that their budget is gonna go up 2% and they're in negotiations for their whole unit. They don't budget the increase, the projected increase, that goes into the town's contingency to be budgeted. So that department, while they might be saying they're only gonna get a 2% increase, that's actually not an accurate estimation because they're gonna give their employees some increase. So in reality, at the end of the year, that department didn't get a 2, or in some instances, they'll report out a 0. They actually got at least a 1 point whatever addition to the 2%. So we're a little unique because we don't put our labor contingency in the town's general contingency, it's in ours. So I think it behooves us to really kind of clean that up. And I think and I don't mean clean it up because it was wrong, it gives us the ability to make those transfers in a very transparent way, so that we can then true up our numbers and then project appropriately. And Dominic, we could not ask for a better person to do it, so
Thank
we're very fortunate.
Any other questions on the financial? No? Seeing none, we'll take consensus on the January 2019 financial report.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And yes. Thank you. We're on item 3B. Mr. Mencher, the food services. They usually just,
I'm
the
fine.
backup.
Okay, we'll start with B1, the year-to-date comparison report. Your first report, under the sales and revenue for January, our sales were $106,240 with reimbursements at $105,543, totaling with catering a total of $212,115, noting 21 serving days versus 16 days last year. All in all, we did have a strong sales month. On the expense side, as you continue down, we had $189,277 of expenses. The food purchases were high at $80,210, but I did see an increase of $7,000 versus last month's ending inventory on product that was paid for but not used. As you continue down, the profit for the month was $22,838, mainly due to receiving our first healthy foods check, which is noted below. The reimbursements detail, we continued to see an increase in federal lunch and our high school breakfast program. Total reimbursements were $105,543. And below that, we go into our statistics, which show the revenue per day, the expenses per day, meals, and meals per day. Once again, noting that 280 meals per day difference for the better versus last year, which is a very promising figure to look at. Year to date, on the top right of the document, shows the sales for $948,496, expenses at $1,004,671, which shows a loss of $56,175 year to date. I feel within the last 5 months remaining, I feel we can cut this deficit to a break-even point. The bottom right of the document shows our reimbursement detail year-to-date figures. As mentioned previously, federal lunch shows a 35% increase versus last year's numbers, but noting that this year we do have 6 more serving days, and our breakfast program in the high school once again shows strong results as we see a $7,900 difference for the good. Any questions on B1?
Mrs. McKay?
Yeah, so actually, so I'm guessing, Dr. Mento, you got to sleep in 6 extra days this year than last year. It's got to be predicated on snow days and whatever. But, yeah, but I'm astounded by the. Yeah, you look refreshed. You'll make up for it tomorrow. But I'm really astonished by the reimbursement details. So we all know our free and reduced have gone up significantly. We know that. What do you attribute that to, Dave? Do you think we've just done a better job in capturing these families and helping them recognize, this is available to them, or is it truly our demographics
I think
change that?
it's a blend of everything.
Yeah, do
It's
you?
demographics. There's some more resources now that they could go out and apply that you all know that we have the online.
Right.
And we'll go over on one of the participation reports, it shows you that more families are applying to the
Yeah.
program for those benefits. But I think it's just a blend of everything.
It's a huge number when you look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's important for our community to understand that that shift is huge.
Mr. Votto?
Just a quick question, on the food and milk, the 45,000 increase, you said that was due to, I imagine, costs went up.
Absolutely.
Is that the only thing?
No,
I mean,
so on that difference, Mike, what I reported out was, besides the inventory being a little higher for the
Because
close
you're
of
feeding more
January,
kids.
Right,
is
yeah.
our sales are up, so we're spending more money. Our 6 days more
I knew there was
than
something.
last year is increasing in just food
That's a big-
purchases.
it's a big jump.
It is a big jump. And I did report out the last 2 months, that is an area that I'm analyzing now and is a concern of ours. And I've brought it to my manager's attentions who purchase food on where we're at, and it's not the greatest number. It's not a good number. And we're making some strong efforts now to look at our high-cost items that are on the menu and to
Well, you
look
have
at other
really-
options.
Right, I mean, you really have no control. I mean, food goes up, and if the kids are buying more lunches, those are, one good thing, one bad thing, but unless you go shopping around, but that's not really practical.
No, we're buying our bid items, but it's a blend of production, of food waste. There's a lot of little factors in what derives food costs, and those are areas that we're bringing to the table, to the managers, and show them these numbers, and it is a concern.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Castelli?
Actually, Dave, you just sparked a question in my mind about food waste. Do we track that in a cost perspective?
So we don't, in food services, you guys, I think, are on the distribution list for the food share program, right? Are they on it?
They're not
Okay, so the food share program has a total poundage that they report back to us every few months. And it was a topic Dominic and I talked about is, there's waste, and it's out in the dining rooms, and they're collecting the ones that are going over to Master's Manna, but we don't track that. We offer a reimbursable state meal. They have to take the required components, and then once they get past the register, the students are not apt to eat the whole thing.
So
that's
so the
different.
majority of the waste is that because of the federal requirements that the kids have to
It's a
take
good
it?
portion of it.
Well,
but
there's
we-
two
What
different
about-
types of waste. I
Right,
think that
thank
you
you.
Yeah,
have,
that's,
and I think that that's a paid waste,
Yeah, we're fine with
unfortunately.
that.
I
Right.
mean, I don't mean to quantify it that way,
Yeah,
but it's a
they
paid
for it.
waste.
Yeah, we don't-
I think the other part of waste that I would suggest that, you continue to investigate is the potential waste for overcooking.
Right.
Right,
but you don't
Food
sell it.
and over projecting, because some of that could still be, while it's waste, it doesn't have to go into the garbage, that could be recovered as well, which I know Masters Manor was collecting some of that at one point. But regardless of that, I mean, which is great and it's charitable to do that, however, that's where you're gonna look at, and I think that's your production records.
What I mentioned just a moment,
Yeah.
yeah. That is a concern.
Mr. Votto?
But you have to overcook though, right? Because I
In
mean.
some instances you do,
kids,
yep.
I don't know if they do that here or not. I mean, they must say in the morning what they're gonna, if they're
Middle
gonna buy
school
how
and high
much.
school, they don't.
They don't.
No, right, the secondary schools don't have the electronic ordering system that we put into effect last year. So the elementary, but the elementary managers do batch cook in between the lunch waves. They're good about
Because
that.
kids usually change their minds. I mean, little
Exactly.
ones
The
do, I know that.
Elementary is a little bit more controlled. I think and again, I'm venturing a guess, and it's not on the part of the staff that the
No.
waste is occurring whatsoever. This is not indicative of them not doing something or doing something wrong. The elementary is a little bit controllable, because like you said, Mike, they do pick, and I have to say that this staff does a good job of reminding students that they picked a certain thing. So I'm not too, that's not where my concern is. I think the middle school and high school, it's the nature of who you're serving. So you can anticipate or estimate something might be a big seller, and you estimate your production, and then it doesn't sell as well. It's not because anybody did anything wrong, just it's your customer,
I mean,
it's your
there's no
customer
way of
base.
trying to do the account in the morning? In
I
middle
think
school,
that's,
at least?
I think it takes away from some of the, you can, but I think oftentimes it might actually reduce your sales, because students, when they get to the cafeteria and they see their friend, some of those students will actually buy a lunch even though they brought a lunch, because they'll see what it looks like in the cafeteria and say, hey, I want to try that, and they know their mom or dad put money on their count. So you might reduce your sales a little bit if you make kids have to put in their orders in the morning at the middle school and high school. I don't know. I mean, your staff would know better than I on that, but I know as being a middle school principal, I wouldn't have wanted to lock them into a decision in the morning.
Going back to our, the food share table, were the numbers greater in the middle schools? I can't remember.
I don't recall offhand. I can look at that data. I think that the middle schools, I don't know if the donations were greater. Personally, I think there was actually more food taken by students from the middle school, especially if the popular items that sometimes get left there. But I don't know off the top of my head.
Kind of hard to control.
Mrs. Raccio?
Dave, looking at the service expense year-to-date, didn't the board, it's $29,000, didn't the board fund some of the large service items last year? This is a lot more than what it was last year. I don't know if there's just any large items in there that the board should consider funding if it's a repair or maintenance item, like, just to be consistent in what we did in a previous year.
Yeah, so last year, I think the board funded about $17,000 of
That's what I
repairs.
thought.
And a lot of them happened from the summer through, I want to say November, December. And that's actually something, you're right, this is not comparable because of that. So it would be, if we could get maybe a policy that says something like, repairs over X, and maybe it's a couple, $300, those are gonna go to the board, then we could go through and adjust this account for that and move forward. We didn't really have.
I'm not
we didn't have-
suggesting a policy, I just was
Yeah,
thinking
no.
that wasn't consistent.
yeah.
Whatever
Well, I
the
think-
number
I didn't-
is, just.
Okay,
Yeah, I
all
think
right,
that
so-
we had talked about this, that we just want, if we could come up with some consistent guidelines, the board would agree that if, like Dominic was just saying, if a service is required on a particular piece of equipment that's X amount of dollars more, the board gives us the authority to pay for those with board funds rather than through food services. Right now, we have no real guidelines. We kind of,
Yeah.
so that's what we're just looking for, those guidelines.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that.
Because I think it would be, like you said, Tim.
So what would be a good dollar amount? What, I mean,
I
just if
don't
you were
know.
to throw something out.
Is everything old and getting?
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I don't want to
some of
pigeonhole
those,
you.
yeah.
Or
Um,
food service, I don't want to pigeonhole them, but.
Or do you want to come back next month
Yeah,
with a
maybe.
suggestion
Yeah,
after you look at the
Yeah, let us
Sure,
take a look
okay,
at that.
all right, yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
idea,
yeah,
thank you,
that's-
yeah.
Good suggestion.
And
It's a good
Tammy, to
suggestion.
note, just let you know on the service one that you're looking at, the 29 number, we did pay out a $5,000 pension arbitration on that category, so we just paid that out.
That one, that's different. I would leave that in
Yeah,
there.
that's.
Oh, no, yeah, we
Because-
wouldn't take that
Yeah,
out, but
yeah.
it got allocated to that expense as a
I
service.
don't know, I was thinking that was service and maintenance type of thing.
But
It's a
it
combination.
generally is, but there are also some legal fees in there,
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
what Dave's alluded to.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions?
Let's move on, because we have a lot of documents here.
Okay, we're on B2.
B2, your next document is the cafeteria operations, and once again, that's a summary from the previous document that you looked at. This shows, once again, monthly revenue, meal counts, expenses to include year-to-date totals. The January revenue, once again, is showing the 212,115. The meal counts of 44,537. The meal variance of 15,077. And continuing to the right, the meal variance percent, 51% and change, and a per-day variance of 15.18%, which is our highest total in the last 2 years, which is a very promising number once again. On the expense side, once again, on the second portion of the document, towards the bottom, shows the January totals of 189,277 and 1,004,671 year to date. Bottom portion of the document shows statistics of days served, income per day, expenses per day, noting once again 6 more serving days this year than last. Any questions on the totals?
We'll move on to B3.
Moving on to B3. B3 is our period 7 balance sheet for your viewing. We do not go over this in detail. It's just, once again, Dominic and I committed to you guys that we would at least show you that every period we report out.
Okay.
B4 is the participation. And once again, some of the columns that I like to highlight to you guys is obviously the first set on the left, the total free and reduced, which once again, if you look at the total elementary schools, total free and reduced, the 885 figure, I always look at the previous month, which you don't have, the December log. We went up 12 families applied and are more eligible now, 12. And as you continue to the right of the document for elementary, a very important column that I like to see is the average meals per day. And that is the 1143 total elementary number. So once again, last month, we actually went down 20 meals that month, which is, we were on a good streak, and the elementaries are increasing every month, so it went down. And then to the right of that, the total participation, and we always like to show you the 94%, which includes the absenteeism rate, and it's a state number that the state nutrition people like us to use, the 94.4%, and that's for elementary with 46.1. And what I did was I looked at some past history. I went back to the January log last year, and I wanted to see that number. And that number was 40% last year in January of 2018. So that's a considerable increase of 6 percentage points, which is, once again, very promising number. We continue to the middle school. We had 4 families under the free and reduced, the 401 number, that increased by 4 families. And if you slide over to the right on average meals, they unfortunately went down 7 meals a day. And their participation for the 94% was 39.8, and last year at this time it was quoting a 38%. So there's a slight variance there. And to finish it up at the high school, we had 2 families more applied and are eligible now. They only had 17 serving days because of exams, and the average meals unfortunately went down 8 meals a day. Their percentage point is 27.2. Last January, they were at 20.7%, so that's a considerable increase of over 7 percentage points for the participation from January of 18. Grand total, just real quick, on the bottom, we had 27 more families that were approved or eligible for the free status, and we had the reduced went down, but the free went up. Reduced went down 19 families, but the total families, the 1796 number went up 18 families that are eligible, which kind of answers your question too, Roxanne. It's more, or you could see it right there. And then once again, average meals for the district, we declined 34 meals. But once again, the nice number to see is the total participation, 94% enrollment, is at 40.9, where last January it was 33.4%. So that's a considerable increase, and it just shows you that more students are eating on the lunch line. I owe, these numbers are really good and positive, but I owe it to my employees who go out each and every day and I'm just leading them, and they're doing all the work, and they're doing some great things out there that hopefully you guys get to see once in a while if you come out there. We love to show you what we're doing. Any questions on B4? Okay.
We'll move on to B5.
B4, we'll go to B5, is the marketing plan. So real quick on the first marketing, first page on the bottom, I always extend on the bottom into the January column. Last 4 rows just highlight some important aspects of what I've been doing and working on and/or attending some important meetings. For instance, attend a state breakfast summit class, how to implement a breakfast program, so we're working on that later this spring to roll out a pilot breakfast program for some elementary schools. I attended a USDA food show, which shows us how to process our USDA entitlement dollars on how we should spend our money for next year that they give us. And I rolled out a junior chef cooking competition for 5th graders with Tony Loomis and our wellness event that we're gonna have in March. Hopefully you guys can all attend that. And that is also obviously to increase nutrition awareness with our students. And the topic that the 5th graders will be handing in is a healthy breakfast item. So there's specific parameters on what they have to, absolutely.
Do you have a date for that in March yet?
Yes, it is March 14th, a Thursday, is the wellness fair, and then the junior chef competition will start. Students have to arrive 4:30, the judges will get there, I think it's 5:15, 5:30. We'll send you guys all invitations any day now.
Do you have judges?
We do, we have glorified judges. Catherine.
Glorified judges.
We do. We pick them, and we have some substitutes on the back burner, but I'm sorry you were not picked out of the hat.
No, that's okay. I was going to offer
We'll keep you in mind.
No, not me. I was going to offer up my cooking instructor, because she would probably be very happy to do it. No.
Okay. Just the next sheet on the secondary marketing, last 2 things. I got to get back into the classroom with, at Sheehan. I taught a knife skills class in the Sheehan family consumer classes. I taught 3 different classes on knife demonstrations and all about knives and using the right knife for the right project and sharpening knives and the kids got
Do you
it
do
really
anything
good.
like on cross-contamination, like to understand the importance of your prep surfaces? and-
Yeah, we showed the students because, they have
Yeah.
all these knives in the kitchen.
Right.
Like Miss Nichols said, is they don't know how to use them.
Yeah,
And, you get a student using a paring knife and she has to chop a carrot. So I kind of went over each knife and
Good for you.
showed them how to sharpen. So it's
So
kind of
those are
fun.
good skills. I mean, no matter what, you gotta eat, right?
Yes.
You gotta cook.
And then the last one there is implementing, we are up and running with the new Thurston online purchasing module, which the 4 managers love, and it's good. It's gonna really help our program out and make them more efficient to see what they're actually spending. It gives them the dollar figure, it gives them a lot of different variables that they did not have when they were ordering the food for their schools. So, good stuff going on there. Customer service log, we had 1 small incident. It was resolved, it's not open, and it was just 1 milk carton out of a whole batch that actually had
That's-
a defected milk carton with something floating on it, and they knew right away what it was. It was only 1 carton, so it was hard to believe, but Mr. Wade's there, Doug Wade knew right away of the process and took care of it. And luckily, the student didn't drink it, and the manager and I talked to the student, and it's all good. B6, this document here, on December 10th, when we met at the VOGAG building, this handout was presented to you guys in my packet, and I just basically overlooked it, and we had a busy day that night, and I never got a chance to go over with you guys. And that balance sheet there that you have in front of it, it states from period 6 in December that it shows you when we transferred the money from our money market account that we talked about previously in the fall. That was done actually on December 12th. We moved that money over, which is the second line item, the 74,984 number. So we just wanted to, for the record, show you that when we posted it and when it came into our books. Last but not least, B7, there is an update on my capital purchases. There is no document for this. I just wanted to go over you guys
I
because
don't
someone.
have that. Wow, that was like a trick thing to see if you're paying attention.
No, someone had a question on the strategic planning for my food services, and we wanted to follow up on that. So basically, $40,000 was moved off in June, that we moved over for equipment, and $15,000 of the 40 was purchased for our startup, which was equipment that I allocated for the 2 high schools that are really working out well for merchandising and self-service equipment. So we have $25,000 remaining for the 3 strategic items that were on the list. And these items, these bid items will go back out to bid later this month. So we're gonna buy those 3 to say what we said we were gonna do with them, so. Does anyone have any questions on food services? Mike?
I do. Have we, my memory is shot. Have we ever given out a survey recently to parents or students on the food? And
Yes, so last winter, at this time, that was a very important initiative that Dr. Menzo and Dominic, when they hired me, that was very important that we did that, and we did do that.
That was a year ago.
That was last winter, yep.
Are we ready for another one?
I'm not sure.
I know participation probably won't be that great anyway, but
I guess, I mean, it's something that I would say that the Strategic Plan Steering Committee for Food Services could talk about and see whether or not they want to do one this year, or if you want to wait till next year, give yourself a chance.
Yeah, we could
I mean, they're easy enough to do. Again, I don't know what the participation, like you said, I don't know what it will be, but at least put it on an agenda for discussion with that committee.
Sure.
sometimes you hear things and you don't know how to really answer. I do say our numbers are going up, more kids are eating, but I don't know, you don't know what satisfies everybody, so, you know. I would like it to be more than a yes or no, or maybe, or whatever. I would like to see some words from it, but that makes it too difficult.
Well, we did comments last time, right?
Did comments?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
I just think
There was
sometimes that
comments.
becomes a little more specific and you get a better idea, but I don't know, it's just a thought, I don't know what thinks about that, but it's something I
Yeah.
think that has to be done soon, just there, so.
Absolutely, we'll talk
Okay.
about it in the strategic.
I'm sure anecdotally, your staff knows what are the popular meals and what are not popular. And, I mean, I don't think that would be hard.
We call them favorites,
Yeah, I'm
absolutely.
sure you can.
And that's
you
where
have
on
a
their,
good
they
handle on
base their
that.
production on. 85% of that item is gonna be in,
Makes
yes.
sense.
If they don't like it, they're not gonna buy it.
Like
That's-
French fries, right?
They do.
We're over that.
That's all I have, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we'll take consensus on the cafeteria reports for January 2019, starting with Mrs. Raccio.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
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 and yes.
All that detail.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Item C, maintenance facilities update. Mr. Deptula,
Good evening.
good evening.
Please bear with me on this. This is the first time we've done this in a long time. We used to do it quite often, but it gets kind of involved. So I'm going to go through the items. If you could hold your questions to the end, I would appreciate it. Or you could hold them till next month. It really doesn't matter when you ask the question. Tomorrow, next week. anything.
And after each.
Absolutely.
Good luck.
Okay, so the first item you see is oil tank removal. That's actually all-inclusive, including the installation, but the removal was done by an outside vendor. That's, right now, we're working on the slab, and we will be installing the tank in-house. The next item is the bake shop. That was through curriculum. That's complete with the exception of one item. They need to buy a hood. It's a relatively inexpensive hood, and when that comes in, we'll install it. Next item's pretty interesting. Highland, and the name is wrong because I think Highland may have one of these, but this is actually Stevens, and our tree cutting vendor, who has gotten a lot of work this year due to storms, has offered to do this project for basically free, and I estimate the value somewhere around $10,000. It may be more than that. This is all climbing. There's no truck involved. It's all climbing. It's in the woods, and the problem is the area is unsafe. It's in wetlands, so there's a lot of laydowns. So before we let kids into that area to use it on a regular basis, we're going to make sure it's safe. We're going to clear the perimeter about 25, 30 feet beyond any possible use. There's also going to be a little sitting area where we take lay down logs and position them to where the kids can actually sit on them and listen to a teacher speak.
I know I'm supposed to hold the question, but lest I forget it, do we need approval from inland wetlands to cut those trees down?
We are not cutting anything that's alive. All we're cutting down is stuff that's a hazard, which we do on a regular basis. But this area is not, it's not an area where there's paths. Quite often we do that like where cross-country paths are. But no, there's no approval for this at all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then fourth school window project, that's going into this coming summer. We started it last summer. The schools we're working on this year is Highland and Lyman Hall. The fourth school theater renovation, that's complete now. FEMA disaster recovery. Believe it or not, I think this is the 5th FEMA event that I've worked. It's getting old. Prior to that, we never had one. Maybe that's my next job. I don't know. Federal, I don't know. Food service, the warehouse was damaged by a couple trees that came down. Unfortunately, it wasn't part of a FEMA event, so that's probably going to be our insurance carrier. Pothole repairs, we started that early this year because we kind of need to take some action right now. Generally, my staff fills holes on a temporary basis. We use a plate compactor, make it last as long as we can, but then we bring a vendor in and we try to cut them back to good pavement, and our patches generally look like squares or rectangles, not a hole. So we try and handle that the best we can. Next thing is we have an ancient Toyota truck that once belonged to the fire company. It was donated to the town of Wallingford. It doesn't cost us a dime, but it's in need of some repair, so that's something that we're going to handle in-house. The great thing about this truck, it doesn't weigh anything, so when the gardener drives up to a wet lawn or sign, it doesn't do any damage. It's small, has 4-wheel drive. So we're going to try and keep that truck going for at least another 5 years.
So you retire.
We try not to do that kind of thing, but in this is the exception. The next item is develop bid specs for the 5-school oil tank replacement project and bid specs for the roof replacement. Those are things we do in-house. We save quite a bit of money doing that. The original tank installation involved 2 engineering companies, and we really feel we don't need to do that. There was a study done and then a company hired to do the project. We'll handle that in-house also. Moran lab renovations, you may have seen something somewhere along the line that said tables. It's not tables, it's millwork, it's plumbing, it's electrical, it's gas. But that's something we can better handle in-house, control the costs. So we're going to take all this stuff out that was put in 1996 and open up the classrooms. Most of this millwork, they really haven't used it. You know, some of it was used for a while, but right now it's just sitting there, it's getting in the way, and it takes up half the classroom space. So Joe Piacentini would like us to take it out. It seems like a good idea to me, so we're going to do that in-house. We're actually going to start on it before school ends. We're going to disconnect all the utilities. Nothing that anyone will notice, but we're not taking the millwork out until summer. They really can't afford to give us any classrooms during the school year. If that changes, we'll jump right on it. The next item, let's see, R-stamp welding, that should have been completed today. We had a leak on a boiler at Lyman Hall. It was fairly extensive. It took, it took our welder, our R-stamp welder, about, I'm going to say 8 hours of constant welding. So that was good to get completed today. $10,000 is only an estimate. It will probably be a little bit more than that. Highland, we're gonna do some classroom fan installations. The original request was for ceiling fans. We may try to use oscillating wall fans because they provide a little better level of comfort to the occupants. Ceiling fans tend to give you a constant velocity of warm air coming down from the ceiling. Oscillating fans, you know, when it hits you, you feel cool, and then it goes away, but you feel cool again in a few seconds. And that, for most of us, that works better than ceiling fans. Let's see. Mainline steam trap service, that's all underneath Lyman Hall. Years ago, we replaced all the steam traps in that building with steam traps that cannot fail, either open or closed. They can only become clogged, which is great because there's no parts involved. You just take them apart, clean them, put them back together, and you're done. Years ago, service guy would come, he'd look at it, take it apart. I hope I can find these parts, and he may or may not have come back to that steam trap, which gave us a lot of problems. So that's just kind of routine maintenance that needs to be done, usually every 2 years. Small engine service and repair, it's hard to imagine, but we hover between 60 and 70 units spread out over 40 miles, so you can imagine how big of a project that is. That is something that our staff handles in-house. If we had a mechanic, we would let him do it, but right now our groundskeepers handle that in their off time. So if you have any questions, feel free.
Mrs. Purcell?
First, I want to say thank you so much for the Moran lab renovation, getting on that right away. I just had a couple real small things that were on the budget that was allocated for this year, and I didn't see that on this list, so I wasn't sure. One was just two. Fritz, the ceiling fans for Fritz rooms A1, A04, and D06, it was $6,000. And Parker Farms, the outdoor solar pole lighting and parking lot.
Those are both, I believe those are both approved items that are allocated?
They were both allocated. I
Yes.
just didn't know if they were already done or
No,
if
they're not done.
Okay.
That'll be done probably this school year, maybe into the summer, but we are going to put our first solar light in the Parker Farms parking lot.
Okay.
And we hope from there, maybe it'll be dozens of solar lights.
All right, thank you.
Mrs. McKay?
I really like this document, Mark, and I mean, I think it's amazing. It gives you an appreciation for the breadth and depth of your staff and how much you guys do. And I think of you guys as like the little engine that could. You guys just put out a ton of work. You obviously have very talented people that work for you, and I just think it's amazing to see the variety of things that you guys do that do save us money by doing it in-house. And then you feel comfortable because you know it's done right, too. It's not just saving money, but it's getting it done correctly. So I just wanted to highlight that and thank you for that, and thank your staff. It's, people just don't appreciate all those behind-the-scenes things
Well,
that get done.
It's nowhere near as exciting as spicy chicken sandwiches.
Yeah, there you go. But no, I truly do appreciate all that goes into this, so thank you.
Mrs. Castelli?
Different side, I've never seen.
I know. What happened to you in 2019? Well, you're a little cheeky. Mark, you've become a little cheeky here.
I'm not even gonna.
I can talk about this stuff for hours if you'd like.
It's good.
Right?
Good.
Mrs. Castelli?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to say the same thing that Roxanne said, but just a shout out to your team. They are incredible associates that really go above and beyond. They're willing to do whatever needs to be done, and I want them to know that we appreciate that. At least I appreciate that.
Thank you
Secondly,
very
I do have one question for you with regard to the repair of the gardener's truck. Is the $500 for parts? Because if it's not, I was thinking, why don't you send it over to Lyman Hall and let the kids in the auto place work on it?
It's really beyond their capability.
Oh, okay.
And tell you the truth, I'm probably talking about spending $20 on a piece of metal. But until I get into it, I won't know. And it's something I'm gonna work with my staff on in the evening. One night, it's already at the garage, it's taken apart. And it has a section of frame rot that I need to fix before we put it back on the road. If I can fix it, it'll be, like I say, another 5-6 years
Yeah.
anyways.
Okay. Well, just keep them in mind if there's any other vehicles, because I'm sure that, they'll welcome the work.
Mr. Votto?
Yeah, first of all, fans for high, did you talk about just fans they put up?
No,
What are you talking about?
wall mount.
Wall mount?
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yes.
We've used them in quite a few rooms, and people seem to like them. And the cost for a wall mount is minimal. Usually you try and mount it over an outlet, so you don't have to do any electrical wiring. You just mount it and plug it in.
All right. The other thing I get concerned about is repairs at Dag and Marine, especially with this facilities thing still hanging in limbo here. My idea would be to hold off on anything until we see where we're gonna be going with that. I mean, the lab renovations, I'm assuming, are the rooms that are no longer being used as science lab rooms, is that correct? A few of them.
They may be used for science, but they do not need the lab
They don't need
stations.
tables anymore and
No.
all that stuff.
The roof issue at DAG is an issue.
It has
That
to be
can't wait,
addressed.
yeah.
Well, that's, whether it's, well,
That's gonna have to be done regardless.
probably.
Yeah, that Mark has been dealing with, his staff have done a remarkable job, but we're at the point,
Yeah. I'm
we just
concerned
unfortunately
about,
can't.
You know, some things you may do might be reimbursable, either whole or part.
Well, and
And
that's,
that's why,
well, and that's why, you know, if you recall, when we went over the strategic plan items, we didn't put anything on there for Lyman Hall, Sheehan. DAG, we did put the roof because, again, that was a difficult scenario that we have to get accomplished, because otherwise we're gonna have, potentially problems that we're gonna borrow that we don't wanna have. But everything else we've taken off, to your point. We really have put a hold on it because we need to know where we're going.
all right, so I still question the lab renovations, and anyhow. The other thing was, have you had any complaints or concerns about water getting through the windows at
We've had some, but it's common in with wind-blown conditions. The sidewalls of these buildings, especially old window systems, they're gonna leak. Generally, if you have just a rainstorm, they don't leak, but there is no fibrous materials involved. It happens. We have every single building in the district has some kind of leakage when you have wind and water working against your sidewalls. It's almost impossible to avoid.
So it's not every rainstorm?
No.
It's just when there's extra rain and wind,
It's the driving rain.
the driving rain?
Yeah, we've had no issues beyond that.
All right, but in such a scenario, is there a way you can even prevent the water from coming in? Are there things that have been done or can be done?
Years ago, but the EPA has, they're concerned about asbestos, PCBs. We cannot service those windows correctly without removing them from the building.
And that would be part of the renovation
Yeah,
project.
well, and our next window project, if we get to it, is Dag
Moran, yep.
and one of the elementary schools. So if that doesn't get addressed during the renovation process, if there is one, that's something that we're gonna tackle.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we are very, very cautious about moving forward with any work that may be compromised at a later date by a project. When we do installations, we generally try to make sure everything's up to code. So as far as that concern, there's no way we're going to have anything removed. If you knock down a building, and we've worked on it, yes, you're gonna be removing some of our work, but we can't help that. And to try and take too much of a back seat to that can cause us problems down the road. But we're weighing everything very carefully as we move forward. The last thing I want to do is install something and have some project remove it. I've had it happen to me, so we're very, very aware of that.
Just a side note, many years ago on the board, I don't know if you guys remember, we never got this kind of thing, we just got anytime made a repair and what the repair costs were, that was it. It was after the fact, so we.
Right.
Yeah.
It was to know then.
Right?
Just, I like this is good, thank you.
Dr. Menzo?
I just want to echo the sentiment of Ms. McKay and Ms. Castelli, and I think I'm seeing a lot of head shaking. Mark and his team are remarkable. Every storm, every natural disaster, all 5 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you're
We
counting.
Busy year.
are very, very fortunate. And again, I thank you for bringing that up, because they consider every project they do as if it were being done in their own homes. And I think that's something that goes unnoticed. Oftentimes that they don't get necessarily the credit. They're the ones here when others are at home because we have no school, or because it's a weekend. They're the ones who are getting my crazy telephone calls on the weekend asking, why are windows open? Or why certain things are occurring, but they're there to respond. Be it Mark getting interrupted at dinner with his wife, unfortunately, or a foreman or someone else, they're there to respond. And I just think we have an incredible crew. I wouldn't trade a single one in. They're so caring and they support each other. And that is so important. So I just wanted to say thank you, Mark, for your leadership. It's really fun to work with you. We laugh a lot, and as you can tell by tonight, but also your team is just incredible, and we're very, very fortunate as a district.
Mrs. Purcell?
I also just want to thank you, because I was one of the ones that asked to have this put on the operation meeting. And I just think it's so important for us to see this. I mean, we're going into this building project, and when people are asking me what's going on in the schools, this really helps me to be able to talk to them. So thank you for reporting this out.
Mrs. Castelli?
And I just want to say, I was on the board when we hired you, Mark, for this position, and we had gone through an awful lot of interviews, and I think we made the best choice in picking you for this job. You've done an incredible job, and I just want to thank you for making us look good that we hired you.
Absolutely.
Any further comments? Thank you, Mr. Deptula.
And he does 2 shows every night.
Yeah.
All right,
You
the
think
next-
I do comedy?
Is,
The next item on the agenda is the 2019, 2020, and the 2020, 2021
Yes.
proposed
Yeah,
school
keep the colored one.
calendars.
So in front of you, keep the 2 colored ones that I handed out tonight. So I just want to say thank you to the committee that met. We met a few times to kind of talk about planning out the calendar for the next 2 years. So the committee was made up of teachers, administrators, Mrs. Castelli was there, and Mrs. Corso. So we appreciate everyone coming to help and get this going. So if we look at the 2019-20 calendar first, I just want to highlight some of the changes that we talked through and are recommending for the next school year, and actually the school year after as well. Starting with the PD days that start before school, this year we decided to put all 3 of them together. So if you look at the first calendar for 1920, you'll see that the first professional development day would start on August 22nd. It would be the 22nd, 23rd, and then Monday the 26th, and then school would start on Tuesday, August 27th. So in collaboration with the teachers and the committee members, we decided we wanted to try this year, instead of doing 2 days in the beginning and then 1 day the following week, which was usually that Friday we had done, put all 3 full days together and then start school. If you take a look at all the yellow, as we've typically done, those are our holidays, vacation days planned out for the year. The yellow days that have the star with them are our full-day PD days. So there's no students there on those days, but those are full PD days. So if you take, yep, so if you take a look at, yeah, they're starred yellow. So like November 5th, it's election day, so there's no students, but it's a full-day professional day for us. The other day would be the day in March that we do a full PD day. That would be March 20th. So there's no students that day. But it's a full PD day for us. One of the things we really wanted to kind of talk about here and bring to the committee, we had talked at length about it, was if you take a look at the month of December. So this year, the holiday happens to fall in the middle of the week that we have the break off. So that Friday before, if you look at the 20th, remember all of those underlined numbers are our early dismissal days. So if you take a look at that day, there was discussion around whether it should be a full day of school or whether we should make it an early dismissal day. So if you look at the page that I handed out to you, that kind of, it's just kind of a double-sided sheet here. It's something I put together that kind of goes through from 1997 all the way to current of what we've done in the past, just to give you kind of a little bit of past practice to see when we've given days as half-days and when we've kept them as full days.
In that kind of a situation.
In that kind of a situation. So some of them are highlighted to see the same exact way we've done it now. So if you look at back in 2013-14, similar to the proposed calendar for the 1920 school year, was a Friday. We left it as a full day of school. I also included down at the bottom, neighboring towns that have their calendars already posted on their websites, whether they are giving an early release day on that 20th or not. Some of the neighboring towns that are already done, they are. Right now, what I find to date, Newington and North Branford are keeping it as a full day. The rest of the neighboring towns, Berlin, Cheshire, Cromwell, Meriden, Rocky Hill, and Southington, it's a early release day. So that was kind of something that we had met a few times to talk about. Most of the committee members felt that we should leave it as an early release day, but they wanted me to bring it here and bring it up for discussion, since some of us felt like it could really be a full day of school.
Just one other point to make on the matrix, you'll see in those earlier years, 97, 98, 99, those earlier years where there was no early release day, the comment was made that those were the years when they used to get a February vacation as well. So just to keep that in mind. I don't know if that really
For
plays
clarity,
into it,
though,
but.
That's not what I meant. So before, when I said similar to this situation we're in this coming year, though all those no's don't mean that it was the day before Christmas Eve. In other words,
Was it the 23rd?
every single year they didn't have 2 days before Christmas.
Right,
Right,
So that's why those were all no, probably.
right.
right.
That's a good
It
point.
was just the day, what is it, normally Christmas Eve is a full day off, right? It's the day before Christmas Eve, it's a half day.
Right, so what I went, but these were not half-days, so what I included was the day of the week that fell before, and that was considered a full day.
Okay. Now, before I go on with my other ideas.
Yes,
let me-
sure.
Can I just ask, how many people comprise this committee, this calendar? And how many teachers, how many, is it just one?
Two
Because
Board
you-
of Ed, no.
Two Board of Ed members, one high school administrator, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7, 6 or 7
Well,
teachers.
plus the union president,
Next question. 7
Right.
teachers plus the union president?
or was he might be one of the 7. I'm
No,
not
he's
sure,
one of
but-
the 7.
Yeah.
I'm visually going around the room.
And
Yeah.
then Danielle was there, of course.
Right.
And then, well,
Sharon Bukowski
Sharon,
was
but
the
she's
note
just
taker,
there
so
to
I
take
thank
the
you.
notes.
I thank
Poor
her for
Sharon
that.
to put together the calendar.
My next
Script
question
change.
is, why don't we have April vacation the week that there's that Good Friday? So you can regain a day. Why didn't you make the April vacation April 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? If you
I
have it the
think-
week before,
yep.
you gain a day.
We do, but it's typically
Or- or
early,
before.
so we typically do the 3rd week in April when I went back and
You
looked.
know, normally I would say, yeah, it's too early, but keep in mind, we don't have a February vacation, and we're getting out earlier in June. It's an early date in June. That's why I'm just throwing that out there. I mean, it's just an idea.
Okay.
You
It's only
save
one
it,
day.
You gain a day,
Yeah.
you know, that you might need, so. So you're saying the reason for it is because
It-
it
we
was
t-
too early?
Right, we typically do usually the 3rd week. So that's kind of why we kept that consistent as the way we've done it, because that is rather early to do. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I do.
Any other points, Mr. Voto?
I think you better be on this committee.
On 1920, we're only on 1920.
Yes.
There's one,
We're only
there's
on
one other
1920.
thing. There's one other thing that's different that I just wanted to point out. So on our days where we do a 2-hour student early release, we typically always do them on a Thursday. This year, the committee recommended that just for the month of October, it is on a Wednesday, October 16th, because the high school gives their PSAT exams in the morning on that day. So we felt that would kind of be a nice day to do the PSAT exams in the morning and then make it an early release day in the
So we have
afternoon.
8 early release days?
Yeah, we kept with the same numbers.
Okay.
I guess the question is there a question about?
I think that's just the question of, I put it on this, we left it on this calendar as an early release day for Friday, December 20th.
You don't have any.
Do we want to leave it as an early dismissal? I'm sorry, is it early dismissal, or do we want to put it as a full day? The committee, majority of them wanted it as an early release day, but they understood we were going to bring it here for discussion.
Right, so full transparency, I was the dissenting vote.
I'm
I
with
was
you.
the one that, I could not see, they already have 8 days. I couldn't see why they needed
Making
the
it 8 and a
Friday
half.
to be a half a day. It just didn't make sense to me, but, you know, I said we just bring it here and let the board decide.
Mrs. McKay?
I completely agree with that. I see no reason why you need a half-day there. The only question I have, I'm assuming there's no union issues, nothing written in the contracts, that we have absolute wiggle room on this.
We do.
But I'm with you, Kathy. You know, I mean, the committee is made up of people that are going to benefit from getting out early. I'm sorry, I'm not suggesting anything, but I just don't see the need to have a half-day there. I really don't.
Further comments?
One other thing I want.
I'm not going to die on the hill on it.
Yeah, no, I
but,
understand.
you
Just
know,
to kind of add.
I'm not going to tick off people
Yeah.
over this, but I just don't think it's real. I don't see why you need that.
Sure, and I did go back and double check for the days when they were half days, full days, just to go back to 2012, and thank you, Karen, thank you for helping us with this. You know, back last year, when it was a half-day, so to speak, the student absence, because it came up as a question on the committee, it was 367 students were absent out of approximately 5,782 students on that
I'm sorry,
particular
this
day.
is based on what? If it's a half-day?
If it's a half-day, we just kind
So
of
they
wanted
say
to
they
look
don't
at.
come if it's a half-day?
Right, we wanted to look at how many students are absent on that particular day. Do families kind of pull them out for the early release day and travel? And so it was 367 students. The year before, it was 449. If you look at the teacher absences, on that particular day, it was 21, it was 33. So again, just more information just to kind of fuel your.
Mrs. Purcell?
What's the normal absenteeism?
Yeah.
Like just on a regular average day, I don't know how many students
Yeah,
are
I
usually
can
out.
pull it up. It ranges.
Okay. So I mean, is that heavy?
I don't think it's,
Okay.
I would have to get back that
I would have to
informa-
look at it.
Get that
yeah.
information to
I don't
you.
have it
And-
handy on me.
So the only year we're talking about this is 1920. It's not an issue for 2021. It's just 1920.
Right, it's just 1920.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Reynolds.
Yeah, I was going to join two ladies saying the same thing. I don't understand the early dismissal on that day. I just, it's not like it would be a travel day like the day before Thanksgiving or something like that. It just doesn't.
I mean, I don't want to make your,
No.
how do I say this? If it's going to become problematic, I mean, I guess, or it makes relationships not as nice, or, I'm sensitive to.
I appreciate that.
I'm sensitive to things like that. So I guess, Danielle, I would look to you to recommend to me, and if you feel that, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but that if you don't feel comfortable, don't answer it, and that's fine. I'm okay with that too. But if you feel it's in the good of the majority and for life to give it a half day, like I said, I'm not going to die on the hill on this, but.
I mean, I kind of see it both ways. I do
Yeah.
agree that it, in my
Fair enough.
opinion, it could be a full day. I don't really I don't feel the need for it to be an early release day. A lot of the things that were brought up, and that's why I did the research, was that a lot of the neighboring towns are giving the early release day. So that was some of the sticking point for some of the other people on the committee. Not so much for me, but they did understand that if it is a full day, then it is a full day.
Okay, it's going to be Mrs. Purcell, followed by Mrs. Castelli, followed by Mr. Votto.
I think I kind of was just going to say exactly what you were saying. Is it the same districts that do the snow days with us and everything else happen to be doing an early release? And I didn't know if we were going to get kicked back about that. That was all.
Sorry. I think it is a similar group. I think it would bear maybe some context for if I could just share something about the 2021 calendar, just because you might, based on something that the union's willing to do, you might see it as an opportunity to be, to have it be taken into consideration. The 2021 calendar, you'll notice that the teachers are going to start on the 24th of August, and the 27th will be the first day of school. Technically, according to our contract with the teachers, they're not supposed to start school, they're not supposed to come into work until the last Thursday of August. They would actually make that the first school day. So technically, if we were following the contract, but they agreed, from what I understand, the committee, they agreed that they would start earlier. So technically, for the 2021, if we were to follow what has been the past practice, the first day for teachers to do professional development would be on the 27th of August, the 28th of August, and then 31st, with school starting on the 1st of September. So in an effort to be cognizant of the school year length, they were willing to compromise. Again, I'm just sharing this with you. I'm not suggesting, I just figured that it's important for you to know this, that they were willing to come in those additional days to start the year earlier for students. And you guys can provide the context, but I just felt that I don't want to have you make a decision on one year, then I say this and say, oh, somebody say, because it'll happen, oh, if I'd known that, maybe I would have made a different decision.
Right.
So that's why I'm sharing that. But Kathy, you were at the
Yeah,
meeting.
I wanted to just say, not only did they agree to do that, it was their idea.
It was their idea.
They were the ones who
Correct.
suggested that even though the contract says technically they can't start until the fourth Thursday of the month in August, that they were willing to back it up to the beginning of that week, so.
You still felt with the way you did.
Well, I was looking at them separately. I didn't look at them in context of,
All right.
combined.
Mr. Votto?
Let's go to 2021. I hate to make a big deal about this, but if we go to 2021, you're saying that if you don't start on the Monday, you make it a Thursday. How does that affect the rest of the year? It
You're-
just pushes the last day of school up a little bit?
It pushes the last day of school up to the 15th, I believe it would be.
Instead of-
Well, actually, no, it'd be actually later than that, because you would have 1, 2, 3, so you'd be picking up 3 days. So instead of the 10th, it would be the 16th.
Which is still-
Wait, you're picking up 3 days.
Excuse me, the 15th. I was right the first time.
The
I was
15th.
right the first time.
15th.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, the other concern I have is,
Which
know-
the only, if I could say with that, the 15th, when you think this through, we usually add 9 or 8 days. That brings us to the last day of school with snow days to the 25th of
25th
June.
of June.
So that is a late end of the school year. And we know that that then causes challenges with heat and all those other.
Pieces.
but this year we've only had no snow days.
But again,
But we don't-
I'm just
Yeah.
bringing you out. When you look at the 1920 calendar with the last day of school being projected at the 10th, and then now you're going to the 19th,
Right.
that still builds into it 7 days of snow, which is a pretty decent amount of snow days.
Right.
So I'm just,
Yep.
Point of
I
clarification.
just feel another half day is a burden on the parents too. I hear enough complaints about the 8 half days. And now you're gonna add another half day in. I mean, it's hard for people who have daycare needs, or whatever. And really, Christmas is not till the following Wednesday. I just don't get it. I don't get it. And I don't,
no, I think,
and I think it's unfair to talk about not your point, but even though they made that concession for the following year,
Right.
I don't like bargaining like that.
no, and I'm not suggesting, I just didn't want you, because I know
I know what you
this
did.
has happened, is that sometimes we'll make one decision, then we'll go into another conversation, and then some people might have buyer's remorse.
Yep.
So I don't want to go there, because, we've had that happen where after the fact, people get more information, then realize they would have made a different decision. So I just
You
was
know, and
trying to
also, if
avoid that.
people want that time off to go away on vacation, they're gonna take a personal day anyway.
The teachers?
Yeah.
They're not.
They're not allowed
they're
to
not
take
allowed to-
I mean, personally, I would have made it to 23rd a half day, just,
That's what
and
it
rather
should be.
than making them,
That's true, that's what it should be.
rather than having them have the whole day off, frankly, if you want my honest opinion.
That's
I
what it
just
should be.
looked, I'm on recess, but I'm going in for half day on the 23rd.
That's what I
'cause
mean.
Right.
My employer doesn't give it off.
Mrs. Castelli?
We don't get it
The discussion there was the fact of why open the school for
That's
the one
fine,
day.
but-
Well, that was truly the reason.
Right.
It is.
Right. But the other point I wanted to make is that this was not contentious. Over the half-day, they were willing, they said, yep, leave it up to the board. They were
Right.
very
Okay.
cordial
I do
about
agree.
that. So
They
I
really
don't want
were.
you to
They
think
really
that they
were.
were, that they were adamant that it had to be a half-day.
Right.
My question is, with the teachers starting earlier than the contract says, have we had a precedent on that before?
We're gonna be doing a MOU.
MOU for that.
That's what I was
So we'll
gonna
have a
ask. if
memorandum
there
of
was a
understanding
memorandum of
documenting this.
understanding.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's, okay. Well, what is the board's pleasure on the, well, we certainly are gonna do one calendar at a time, that's clear to me. So regarding the 2019, 2020 proposed calendar, perhaps we can, are there any other,
I have one simple question. Why is 1920 7 days get added on for snow days, and 2021 we're back to 8 days? And I think it's been the 8 days for the past couple years.
Yeah, I think it might be a typo.
It has been, but I believe.
It
this
just
was
takes
the-
us to the following Friday, I
You just
believe.
wanted to end on a Friday?
Yeah, so that we always try to end on a Friday rather than end in a midweek. Oh, and then for the 1920, it can't go beyond the 19th because the celebration for celebrate the
Yes, that's what it was.
350th.
That's why I was saying
The
it's the
parade is on the
celebration.
20th of June,
Gotcha.
and then there's the week-long of festivities. So we made an agreement that
So that was
Thank you.
why we had talked about that, yep.
well, no.
Well, as is, or you can amend it.
We can,
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to ascertain. If there's a desire on the part of board members to change the proposed calendar with regard to that December 20th, do you want an early release day or not? That seems to be the topic of conversation first.
I would be fine making December 20th a full day.
Full day.
Full day.
I honestly don't care.
All right?
So that's your, okay. I'd go full day.
Full day.
All right, so it seems to be the consensus that we'll have that
There,
change
you didn't tell
on
us.
that.
Oh,
I'll be happy to go with the full day,
okay. I just was curious. I didn't know.
yes. But I think the more educational and instructional time that our students have, the better. So with that in mind, if we're looking at the 2019, 2020 proposed calendar, with the change being that December 20th will be a full day of school. So we'll take consensus on that.
Yes.
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 And yes, thank you. All right. The next item will be the proposed 2021 calendar. Is there further discussion on that calendar, or are we satisfied with how that was presented?
Was the,
Go ahead, Mr. Votto.
was starting the PD on the 24th only contingent upon getting the half-day on the 20th?
No,
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 it's done independent.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
I just.
Not at all.
Clarify that.
Yep.
Okay.
I was just bringing that up because I just wanted to be transparent on both calendars ahead of you voting on either.
Any other remarks on this calendar? So, all right, then we'll take consensus as presented, the proposed calendar for 2020, 2021, starting with Mrs. Raccio.
Yes.
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 And yes.
Can I just make a comment?
Sure.
I just want to note that both of these calendars, as originally presented to the committee, did have changes made to them. There was a lot of discussion and a lot of good thought that went into
There was.
making some modifications. So what you see before you was not what was presented to the committee. We actually did hash it out, and we did make some changes to it.
And in my conversation with the union president, I mean, my brief conversation, he felt the committee was a well-functioning committee, and there was a lot of give and take and a lot of good, thoughtful conversations. So I don't want that to go without being recognized either. I agree with you, Ms. Costelli. It's never easy. I mean, and obviously, everybody has an interest in the calendars. I'm glad we're doing 2.
Yeah, I like
I really am glad we're getting back into that, because we didn't do that for a couple of years because we got stymied by the whole regional calendar. That's what got us out of our flow, because we had been doing that for years. So it's nice. What we'll do is we'll send out the proposed, I'll have Danielle's department send out the proposed calendars to staff and families, letting them know that the
It's nice
final
for
vote.
everybody to
Yep.
plan.
And that the
Yes.
final vote will be next Tuesday night at our board meeting.
Which is
So-
here, correct?
and our board meeting is in here next, it's in the Board of Ed conference room at 100 South Turnpike Road.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any comment from the public? Seeing no public, I would say there isn't. So this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Karen.